You know, over the years, but in particular since September the 11th, I get letters saying I'm being unchristian for my comments about Islam. Interestingly, an infinitesimal few even try to point out factual inaccuracies. Instead, they just call me names or suggest I'm hateful. Let's set the record straight. I don't hate Muslims. Muslims are people created by God in His image. Islam, on the other hand, is a system that teaches hatred while claiming itself to be a religious system of love. Many people refer to verses in the Quran that seem to teach that to kill one person is to kill them all. And it's usually because they've heard someone else cite these examples. So they surmise Islam must really be a religion of love. But you know, it really doesn't say that. Here is the actual verse, Surah 5:32. For this reason did we prescribe to the children of Israel that whoever slays a soul, unless it be for manslaughter or for mischief in the land, it is as though he slew all men. And whoever keeps it alive, it is as though he kept alive all men. And certainly our apostles came to them with clear arguments. But even after that, many of them certainly act extravagantly in the land. It says, whoever slays a soul except it be for mischief in the land. Following that definition, the Quran does not prohibit September 11th. If someone truly believes America is the great Satan, the source of mischief in the land, the Quran offers a blank check. Then there is this verse in the Quran, Surah 9:5. So when the sacred months have passed away, then slay the idolaters wherever you find them. Take them captives and besiege them and lie in wait for them in every ambush. Then if they repent and keep up prayer and pay the poor rate, leave their way free to them. Surely Allah is forgiving and merciful. There's nothing ambiguous about this command. This would surely apply to the one who caused mischief in the land. On the other hand, the Quran has much to say about Christians and Jews. Here is Surah 5:51. Here's what it says. O you who believe, do not take the Jews and the Christians for friends. They are friends of each other, and whoever amongst you takes them for a friend, then surely he is one of them. Surely Allah does not guide the unjust people. You know, most people have never, or probably will never, read the Quran. And you don't have to be a Quranic scholar to see these verses that call for violence against those who are not Islamic or don't believe. And if you doubt that we're seeing this correctly, then all you have to do is look at the history, starting with Muhammad the prophet and his closest followers that followed him. You find that they understood them in the very violent light that we're seeing. They drew the sword and they took the Islamic religion by conquest within 100 years to the borders of Vienna. And so certainly there has to be an understanding of these things in a much more violent light than people are willing to look at it today. You can't say that the Muslim religion is a religion of love and peace. Muhammad didn't see it that way, and I would call him the best interpreter of the Quran. Islam, the religion that teaches love, says of the Jews in Surah 5:64, we have put enmity and hatred among them, the Jews, till the day of resurrection. Islam certainly doesn't do much to discourage the destruction of Israel. Surah 5:82 warns, certainly you will find the most violent of people in enmity for those who believe to be the Jews. According to Islam now, the Jews altered the revealed word of God to their own insidious purposes. Listen to the Quran. Surah 2:120 says, of those who are Jews, they are those who alter the words from their places. And then again in Surah 5:41, it continues, they are among those who are Jews. They are listeners for the sake of a lie. listeners for another people who have not come to you. They alter the words from their places. One can argue that Islam is a religion of peace and love, but it is much easier to find references to war and hatred. The punishment of those who wage war against Allah and His apostle and strive to make mischief in the land is only this, that they should be murdered or crucified, or their hands and their feet should be cut off on opposite sides, or they should be imprisoned. This shall be as a disgrace for them in this world, and in the hereafter they shall have a grievous chastisement. That was from Surah 533. Given the reality that the Palestinian Authority has, through its school system, educated a generation to believe that Jews are thieves, spoilers, and oppressors, the Quran offers plenty of incentive for terrorism, especially if the goal is to root them out of the land they occupy. Surah 33:60 says, "If the hypocrites and those in whose hearts is a disease and the agitators in the city do not desist, we shall most certainly set you over them. Then they shall not be your neighbors in it but for a little while." And Surah 33:61 provides the remedy. "Cursed, wherever they are found, they shall be seized and murdered, a horrible murdering." We get letters, as I said, calling me hateful and unchristian. I'm only quoting the Quran, reading statements issued by the State Department, and citing history, both recent and contemporary. I've quoted the Quran. If you find it disturbing, remember, I didn't write the Quran. I only read some of it aloud to you. And if you think I'm reading too much into this, I need only to redirect you to the fruits of Islamic Jihad, Hamas, Hezbollah, which means the party of God, Al-Qaeda, and the now famous teachings of Osama bin Laden. If it all seems to fit together too smoothly, maybe there's a reason. Muhammad and his earliest followers certainly understood it in this violent way. In the wake of the Israeli declaration of the Palestinian Authority as a terror organization, the armchair quarterbacks are up in arms. The United Nations recently held a day of solidarity with the Palestinians. Secretary General Kofi Annan attended the event. Arab League Secretary General Amr Moussa accused Israel of everything from famine to massacres and murder. He defended the Palestinian suicide bombers, saying, "We stress the need to differentiate between terrorism and the legitimate right of resistance to end the occupation." Occupation? For a decade, Yasser Arafat has pretty much had complete control of what he hoped would one day be a Palestinian state. From the day the Oslo Accords were signed on September 13, 1993, he has controlled his own infrastructure, including his own police, security services, education, and public works. Israel occupies only the land that the Palestinians do not. Israel also occupies land that the Palestinians claim is theirs, but since that includes all of Israel, the phrase ending the occupation is actually the equivalent to the destruction of the state of Israel. Another popular myth is that Israel practices economic aggression. This economic aggression is supposedly against the Palestinians when it closes its borders to the Palestinian workers after a terrorist attack. Few people ever question this myth, particularly when confronted with the reality of the 50% unemployment rate among Palestinians. Now, is the United States committing economic aggression against Mexico when it seeks to limit the number of Mexicans who actually enter the United States? The Palestinian Authority, supported with billions of dollars of foreign aid, could and should provide jobs for its own citizens, wouldn't you say? Now, at the UN Day of Solidarity, a documentary film was screened. It was titled "Gaza Under Siege" and was sponsored by the Ford Foundation. In it, a narrator summed up the current violence in one sentence. Almost daily, children go to throw stones at checkpoints. Many get shot. The film included repeated references to Israel as a racist state. Throwing stones at checkpoints is not a natural behavior, especially for children. It is learned. Who controls the Palestinian education system? Yasser Arafat. Arafat provided a bounty of $2,000 for each child killed while throwing stones, $300 for each one wounded. Then he forcibly bused them to the checkpoints and positioned snipers in back of the ranks, which drew fire on the children. Instant sympathy, also true, but not popularly reported. As far as being a racist state, Israel is a nation of immigrants from every nation on earth. Any Jew, included converted former Catholics from Boise, Idaho, or Russian Orthodox from Siberia, are embraced by Israel. How many non-Arabs live in the Arab states? Is being an Arab a religion? Israel did not begin using live fire ammunition against demonstrations until its soldiers started receiving live fire from the Palestinian side. That is a matter of historical record. Even CNN's archives will bear that out as fact. The oft-repeated myth of Israeli oppression and aggression is as easily dispelled as the mythological term cycle of violence. There are no reported armed Israeli incursions into Palestinian areas not preceded by an attack on Israeli citizens. And the so-called aggressors go home when they're done, without taking a spoil or without keeping any land. Bethlehem remains an Arab possession, as does Nablus and Ramallah in Jenin. A cycle of violence suggests a tit-for-tat response. Israeli retaliatory raids involve military targets. Accidents, of course, happen in war. But Ben Yehuda Street, the Haifa bus, the Sabora Pizzeria, and the Delphinarium disco attacks were not accidents. They were deliberate attacks against civilians, mostly children and teens. To argue that Israel's killing of Hamas terrorist leaders started a cycle of violence that was met by the killing of 10 boys between 14 and 20 and the wounding of 175 civilians in Jerusalem is to turn logic on its head. Not one of those teenage boys was involved in the killing of anyone from Hamas or anywhere else. Yasser Arafat is now paying the price for a decade of terror and lies. The Palestinian youth that he brainwashed in his schools into believing his myths are paying the price as well. It is a tragedy for them. They don't know any better. They've been taught since kindergarten that all Jews are liars, covenant breakers, thieves, and usurpers who stole their land. Palestinian children are taught that Israel has no historical claim to the land, that the only good Jew is a dead Jew, and that Jews are racist, and so on. They have created a degree of hatred that is even greater than that which Adolf Hitler created. You know, the hatred that exists in these areas is not natural. It's something that has to be carefully ingrained into these people. And when you start ingraining this kind of propaganda into children when they're still very young, and it's repeated over and over again, it's very, very difficult to ever be able to reestablish some kind of a relationship between these two groups. This is a hatred that has smoldered for over 4,000 years. It started with the sending away by Abraham of Ishmael, his first son, born from an Egyptian slave. And then there's another group that joined with them when Esau, the twin brother of Jacob, was disinherited. So there are abundance of people that are represented today, and these age-old hatreds still continue to this very hour. And it's carefully taught to the children from kindergarten up.